Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
Please continue to hold for the next available representative.
Americanism, not globalism, will be our credo.
We appreciate you waiting and waiting. What is it you're waiting for? Do you even know anymore?
These are people who work hard but no longer have a voice. I am your voice.
Disconnected.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the weekly wrap-up, the show where we wrap up the week here on Red Eagle Politics. So make sure you guys like the stream down below. You guys know the face cam doesn't come on until we get 100 likes. We're 53% of the way there now as people pour in here on a Sunday evening. We had an eventful week, once again for some not so good reasons, and it's kind of just is a fear that these things are just going to get worse. You had two major atrocities take place. One of them taking place right down the street here, and one taking place not too far from where I grew up. So kind of a little personal when it comes down to both of these things that happen. You know, if something happens in Oregon, you don't really, you feel it. You feel for the people, but it doesn't hit as close to home. Same thing goes for the whole Charlie Kirk thing, where somebody that maybe not, personally, I never really met him personally, but knew him relatively well, felt like losing a family member. It definitely hit differently. And when things happen in your backyard, it's like, well, that could have been you, for sure. When a content creator of sorts gets shot for their political beliefs, that could be you. So definitely it's personal. And we're going to talk about how to actually stop this stuff, and I kind of am a little agitated about how so many people on the right don't know how to set the narrative. They get bogged down in a gun debate, which, again, it's not the guns. I agree it's not the guns, but they're wasting time instead of setting the narrative, because this is an issue, especially a lot of young people care about stopping this stuff, and the guns are not the problem. And we're not getting rid of the Second Amendment. That's off the table. We don't need to, because this wasn't a thing before. But how do you actually stop these things from happening? That's something we should care about. I mean, this is something that you have to protect your own citizenry. The left wants to divert, so much so to the point where, saying thoughts and prayers is not enough, where they say, or they mock that openly. Nobody should be mocking prayer. But at the same time, we should do more than just prayer. Prayer is important. That's the first step, but it's not the last step for sure. Action does need to be taken when it comes down to these things. And we don't need to cede the narrative on these things to our opposition, who literally is cheering on things like what we've seen with Charlie Kirk in Utah. I don't even think that they really care that much about guns. I think that they just care about power. They care about scaring people. That's really all it is. And we need to set the narrative and make sure that we can effectively combat this false narrative and avoid the distraction of a debate. Of course, it's not the gun. That's, when you look at America's history, we've always had guns. This is a new phenomenon. It's largely in the era of social media And there are so many reasons why. We're going to cover them, and we're going to talk about New Jersey as well, because that's really ramping up. That race is really getting tight. It's closer than ever before. Also, Super Chat goal, 20 Super Chats, $5 and above. We are going to, at the end of the stream, if we hit that goal, we're going to do a prediction. We're going to start changing up the goals a little bit to incentivize the conversation so we can hit the goal. We'll be doing an election prediction for 2028 of the choice of the chat. We'll pick one from one of the top fans from the stream, because now we have the top fan badges. That's a new YouTube feature. So hit that like button. We're 16 away. We got almost 200 people here. We're ready to get started, because this is it is exhausting. As someone put in chat, it's been exhausting this month, and exhausting is a nice way to put it for sure, because I think it's a little bit deeper than just exhaustion, but that's part of it. That's part of it. It's scary that this is the nation that we're living in now, with a bunch of crazy people killing people for political reasons, people killing people for reasons that might not be so political but are just senseless atrocities. But 2 of the past 3, including the assassination of Charlie Kirk, were directly political, including 3 of the past 4 were done by leftist violence. 2 were either transgender or transgender adjacent related. And then you have this ICE incident that we'll be talking about first when we hit 100, because, again, that's when the face cam goes on. But it's like, it's insanity. It is insanity. And we will read the one super chat before the stream starts as well. Roku fan asked, and I'll address this quickly, thoughts on Real American Politics getting temporarily banned, because the same thing happened to me back in 2022. He was banned for the same reasons. I think the same thing also has happened to DG. And I think it's strange that all 4 of the largest right-wing election content sphere creators have had this happen to them in some form, even though all have gotten the channels back, including myself. So it could be a mass reporting thing. It could be an algorithmic error. I mean, they give the channels back, so is it really about censorship? I haven't seen the calls going the other way. I've seen this happen with non-political channels. The bottom line is we need big tech reform in this country, because you have a system where you can't reach a person. You cannot reach a person. If you get banned, there's no transparency. This is not something that really can, this is not something that can happen with any corporation. You have more technology than ever before, really, and you're not able to call and get somebody in the United States, at least. If you get somebody at all, it's going to be somebody in the subcontinent in some sort of call center that English is probably their second language, and they're not able to assist you because they're not here. They don't understand the concerns in most cases, and I think that that's a major problem. I think it's a major issue. So we hit 100 likes. We'll put the face cam on. Another week in America marred by mass shootings. This is not something that should be said, but it's getting worse and worse. It really is. It is getting worse and worse by the day, to the point where it's like becoming a war-torn country. I encourage people to carry wherever they possibly can, because you never know if somebody's going to be gunning for your life. You have to fight back, because you could save so many people's lives, and that's the importance of guns. So we're not blaming the gun, but we are talking about this because it's a problem and it needs to stop now. And this is left-wing terrorism that we saw. We're going to cover the political aspect of it, and then we're going to get to the non-political aspect of it, and then we're going to cover New Jersey. So Dallas, ICE facility, not too far from here, by the way. Left-wing violence that took place. This was somebody who shot into an ICE office from far away. Now, the left's reaction to this was probably, you could even argue, a little bit more absurd with some of the claims that we saw than the whole Charlie Kirk thing. But, I mean, it's kind of hard to top that. It's expected. It's not like, oh, wow, look at the left. No, we're past that. We understand these people on the far left, these gaslighters, these grifters. It's all demonic nonsense how they handled it. You had some people celebrating it, and then they realized that they didn't hit ICE. They hit the people in, not captivity, but the people that were detained by ICE, the people that were here illegally. They hit those people. And it's still wrong. It's still an act of violence, an act of terror, but they weren't attacking the people that were, and it wouldn't make sense. You're attacking people that are about to be deported. It doesn't make logical sense why anybody would do that, even if they are going to be violent, which that violence is bad and disavowable as well. Nobody's saying it's not. But the main takeaway is they were not targeting the illegal aliens. The illegal aliens happened to be the victims of a tragedy because they were targeting ICE. These were people that were targeting ICE. You have somebody, and now they're trying to spin it too, because they'll say he was an anti-government libertarian. And what does that exactly mean? There's so many people on the far left that hate the government, especially the Trump government. They like guns, believe it or not. They're militant. The John Brown gun clubs. This guy was no different than John Brown. John Brown is a whitewashed hero. You have a mentally ill guy who shot a freed slave and then killed some slave owners, and he gets heralded to be some sort of hero or whatever. And he had a lot of conflicting schizophrenic beliefs. If he was around today, he would be a mass shooter. He wouldn't be some hero, but he's a hero to the far left because of just the fact that he was militant and he used violence. And he was pro-gun, obviously. The left is pro-gun. Nobody's denying the fact that there's elements of the far left that are pro-gun when it suits their demands, suits their interests, or whatever. So regardless, this was somebody that decided to carry out an attack on ICE, whether they're anti-government or not. You have far-left lunatics, like Vaush calls himself a libertarian socialist. And again, that's an oxymoron, but that's not really the point here. It is an ideology people on the left do claim to have. They're a libertarian or a real libertarian or whatever. This guy was clearly anti-ICE. ICE is symbolically right-wing now, to the point where this guy's a lunatic. Whether he likes the Democrats or not is not the point. He's a left-wing lunatic, and the media has done nothing but egg on attacks like this. They've attacked ICE. They've compared them to the Gestapo. They've called them Nazis. They say they're racially targeting people. Even though most ICE agents are Hispanic themselves, it doesn't matter. The common sense is thrown out the window. These are people that are heroes. They enforce our immigration law. They make sure that America is not being, taken over by literally invaders, because these are people who are not even coming in legally. We could talk about the perils and the downsides of mass legal immigration, but we don't even know who these people are. They're in our country illegally. They have zero right to be there. They should be removed. I don't go into your house at night and start eating food out of your refrigerator. That's what these people are effectively doing to our country. No serious country does this. No country in Central America does this. You can't do this in Mexico. Mexico is a lot harsher. There's other countries that are even harsher when it comes down to people crossing the border. They will do things similarly to what this attacker ironically did to those same people inadvertently. But regardless, this is left-wing violence. And the left has ran with this narrative that all violence that's political in America is far right for some sick, twisted reason or another. And it's not true. They are just trying to say, oh, well, he shot these people. He wasn't attacking ICE. Just because you guys don't know how to aim a gun does not mean that this wasn't an attack on ICE. It wasn't an attack. It was completely an attack on ICE. And when it comes down to the violent political, and we covered this and we've expanded the list, the right-wing incidents versus the left-wing incidents, where you look at the fact that there have been 19 since 2020, and that includes and encapsulates a lot of the BLM riots together. 19 incidents since 2020, 66 deaths. They're on the rise. Even Axios put a study out that showed left-wing violence is surpassing right-wing violence and is an all-time high. And a lot of the right-wing violence is bogus. It's not politically motivated that they talk about. It's like this guy was in a gang in prison that had Nazi symbolism, and people join gangs in prison. Criminals do that for survival. And what happens in prison is they will stay in prison, and they'll get out of prison, and then they'll have their tattoos. And if they commit a crime, which a lot of criminals like to become repeat offenders for one reason or another, it's just how they are, then they'll say that's a right-wing violence. But if you're in a black gang, which again, a lot of those gangs, just like the Aryan Brotherhood, they'll have Pan-African symbolism or something of that nature. They'll never call that, far left. They'll never call that anything. So Regardless, looking at the left-wing violence and the incidences here, we could read through all of them. 2020 BLM riots, there were a lot of different isolated incidents. You could even drum up the incidence level far beyond 19, but it left 25 dead due to the stupidity rioting over a man who essentially died of a fentanyl overdose, by the way. This was not like a racially motivated murder. That was a lie. They lied relentlessly. And you had Chaz become a thing where you had that whole part of Seattle split off and two people were shot by the people in there. They basically seceded from the city, from the country even. And the mayor was like, oh, it's a block party. Two people dying at a block party. They'll freak out if you say that 1-6 was a block party, which was probably more synonymous with that than Chaz, even though you only had one person that was killed there, and it happened to be a peaceful protester who was not attacking the police, but she got shot to death. In fact, you could make the case maybe that's an act of left-wing political violence. I put it in the disputed category for good measure, but Antifa murdered a Patriot Prayer member, shot him point blank in Oregon. Far left attack, one dead. There were, in 2021, several incidences where police were murdered by black nationalists. That's 2 dead. Waukesha, you had the guy who was posting all this stuff about how much he hated white people and all this like black Hebrew Israelite, black nationalist symbolism. And then he ran his van, and they would always be like, van attacks Christmas parade. And it's like Waukesha is a town that's 90-some% white, and they really want to say there's no motive there. When it comes to these studies, they will omit it. But when you look at the actuality of the chain of custody of it, if a white person was posting anti-black sentiments on Facebook nonstop, then goes to Harlem or Oakland or Detroit and drives their car like through a massive like BLM protest or something where it's going to be like 90-some% black, there's no way that they would call that, they would not call that a far-right attack. There's zero shot. Zero. Literally zero, if not negative shot. So, again, that's why it's included. They'll omit that from their studies, but they'll include things like the Georgia incident in 2021, which was not political, but the attacker targeted Asian massage parlors that were suspected to offer sexual services. Turns out the guy was more of a sex addict that was struggling with his own addiction. That's why he drove halfway across town. It's not like he went to the nearby dry cleaners or the Chinese food place where you'd have like a high concentration of Asians. He targeted specifically. That was the only common denominator. So that was not an anti-Asian attack whatsoever. So I don't know why they would even include that. It was just happened to be an attack where the victims were Asian. But they'll include that, but they won't include Waukesha, which is very strange. There was a shooting at a Kentucky bank where the guy did it to prove that gun control didn't work, he was trying to prove that we needed more gun control. It was a pro-gun control stunt. Mentally ill guy on the left, 6 people dead. You had some guy that ran over an older person with his car and said he did it because the guy was pro-Trump in North Dakota. 1 dead. Butler, Pennsylvania attack. 2 dead, including the perpetrator. Perpetrator was a registered Republican. I'm sick of people trying to pretend that means anything. If you actually are like invested in electoral politics, you'd understand that being a registered anything could just mean, oh, I'm going to vote for this person in this primary for this reason. Follow the money. He donated to Democrats. He created an account on Gab, which is a far-right platform, to debate people and to hit back on people. He, if anything, was more schizophrenic, but it was an attack on a Trump rally. It's clear what the motivation was. Anti-Trump, killed a firefighter. Trump got shot. 2023, the Nashville Covenant school shooting. You had a transgender individual that shot up the school for their own identity purposes, according to their own manifesto. That's a far-left attack. Seattle woman stabbed her Trump-supporting parent to death after the 2024 election. 1 was left dead. Shooting by a pro-Hamas leftist at an Israeli embassy, that left 2 dead. Minnesota Catholic school shooting, transgender leftist, pro-transgender, multiple people dead. Madison, Wisconsin, you had a femcel. That one I think you may be able to move to the disputed category. Was a part of some bizarre network where you had another person who was all over the map politically, that shot another 15-year-old in Nashville who identified as a black neo-Nazi anti-capitalist Luigi Mangione fan, not a very stable person. I was debating, do we put that in right-wing or do we put that in disputed? I left it in disputed just because it seemed like they weren't targeting anyone for political purposes, despite, it's not like Buffalo where they targeted minorities in particular, which would be on the right-wing incident list. But you had the Luigi Mangione thing. You had the Nick Fuentes assassination attempt. Somebody goes to this guy's house, not a fan of the guy, but it's like you shouldn't go to somebody's house with a gun trying to kill a person. And then he shot 2 dogs outside. He seemed to be having a schizophrenic meltdown, but he was on the left, had a shootout with the police. He got shot. He got killed. Antifa in Alvarado, Texas, which is, again, not too far from here, an ICE officer was shot dead. And then you have a copycat attack on ICE recently. You had the Charlotte train stabbing, which, again, one person was stabbed, a Ukrainian refugee. Attacker uttered anti-white sentiment after he did that. And then, obviously, the Charlie Kirk assassination. Now, you have some isolated incidents of people on the right. Most of these were killing people for racial motivations. You had a shooting at a Dollar Tree in Jacksonville, shooting in Moreno Valley, California. You had a shooting at a Colorado nightclub where it was somebody who now identified as non-binary, but shot 5 people to death, had anti-gay sentiment. So was this person like genuine? I don't know. Maybe you could even move that to disputed. It's up in the air. But the Buffalo shooting, that was, again, somewhat misplaced logically. It's kind of a common theme you have with the right-wing incidents, is the people that are on the right that do this stuff, there's no logic behind where they would follow. Even if you're evil and carry out an attack, there's no logic behind it. But if it's like the left, oh, Charlie Kirk is powerful, he is spreading hate, then what do? They go and they kill Charlie Kirk. That person is mentally not well. We understand that. I'm not saying they are, but it just takes the left and their framework to its logical extreme, where they say it's okay to kill or harm fascists, and then they say Charlie Kirk and everyone they disagree with is fascist, and then that person does it, and they're like, why would anybody, it's like the meme, why would anybody do this? I wonder why. Maybe look inward. So there's plenty of other incidences. We could debate, should the attack on Melissa Hortman in Minnesota qualify as right-wing? The guy was all over the place politically. He may have voted for Donald Trump, targeted moderate Democrats, which he said Tim Walz made him do it. That could have been a sick joke. I don't know. I think the guy's just messed up. We've covered that ad nauseum. But regardless, you have plenty of incidents, but most of them, more than the others combined, happen to be on the far left. And the death toll is on the far left. So is it both sides doing it? Both sides may do it. There's people on the right I don't like, and we'll get to that possibly in a second, because there's a developing story with the Michigan shooting. But it's not both sides equally doing this. According to all the data that we have, it's mostly the left that's doing it. And they have these fake studies that they prop up. They're like, why is the Trump DOJ getting rid of these studies? Because they're bullshit. That's why they're getting rid of these studies, because you people have lied and have been allowed to lie about this nature of who's committing the political violence in this country. Aryan Brotherhood gang members stabbing each other in prison is not politically motivated violence. It's not. Just anybody can look at that and say, okay, this is not because somebody is becoming radicalized by actual politics. It's, oh, we'll join a gang for survival in prison. That's the gang that's there, and they're allied with the Hispanic gangs, and even the attacks by the Hispanic gangs, they'll also call far right in some cases in prison, because that's just how prison works. Prison's its own animal. And if you want to look at, and in terms of the studies and statistics about who commits the crime in prison, I don't know if that's really a road that the left wants to go down either. So again, you have these horrible atrocities, one in Texas, one in Michigan, and this happened in a Mormon church, an LDS church, where you have an Iraq War veteran that drove his car into it, set it on fire, killed 2 people, injured more. It's a horrible attack. Now this guy, they say now he might be on the right, of sorts, because they found Google Street View outside of his house. There was a Trump sign, even though it was behind a stop sign. Could that mean stop Trump? Maybe. I don't know. But regardless, it doesn't matter. This guy probably was a right-winger, judging from what we have to understand about him. But he also targeted a group of right-wingers and probably killed right-wingers. The bottom line is this person's a demonic lunatic. And he's probably burning in hell right now as we speak because of what he did. And that's the way it goes. Now, prayers for our Mormon friends. I don't agree with Mormonism as a religion. I don't. I've been vocal about that at times, but they're great people. They're lovely people, nice people. In fact, I think they're probably the nicest group of people in the entire country. Nobody would deserve this, but they would, like, just like I said with Charlie, you know, he's like the person who deserved it the least. These are the people who probably also you could make that case just because of how nice they are. I don't know if he was anti-Mormon specifically. Maybe he knew somebody at that church and was targeting that person over a personal dispute. We don't know. That's the bottom line. It could be an anti-Mormon attack. I think it's an attack on all Christians or all people that happen to engage in worship, because this type of stuff could happen to anybody. Any lunatic that does this. It doesn't matter what religion you are. It doesn't matter really anything. It's an attack on everybody. It's an attack on Christians. Whether you can, I don't want to hear if you consider Mormons Christians or not. We're not having that debate now. You know, I get hate for posting this because I say I disagree with their theology when I'm trying to calm other people down about it that might be a little bit more vocal or decide that it's like because it's not appropriate to attack Mormons. And I haven't seen too many people doing that. I saw maybe one or two. The difference is they're getting ratioed by non-Mormons. If a leftist celebrates Charlie Kirk and outright celebrates it, not just criticizes, but celebrates it, they're being showered with hundreds of thousands of likes. I hope some of them are bots, but I don't think they're all bots. I think that's how the left operates. If you spend time on Reddit at all, you would understand that's typically the far left. That's their echo chamber. That's how they operate. So again, you can't compare the two. But this is an awful atrocity, a tragedy. Stuff like this needs to stop happening. This was a guy who was a veteran, an Iraq War veteran, who went crazy. And it begs the question, what drugs was this guy on? Because he served overseas. Not everybody who serves overseas is going to come back and be on pharmaceuticals that are mind-altering, but too many people are. If you talk to veterans, they will tell you that. Too many of them are. You know, you have PTSD, you have things of that nature. They decide to find a solution that is to pump people with pharmaceuticals. They didn't exist after World War II or Vietnam, but they exist now, and then people do these crazy things. I don't know. We don't fully know the motive. We don't know where the guy's politics lied. Even if he was a Trump person, maybe he was not a right-wing person. You know, that is technically a thing too. And plenty of far-right attacks have been carried out by Trump haters. Far-left attacks like the Josh Shapiro firebombing, that guy was on the far left, but he indicated possible support for Trump for accelerationist purposes. It wasn't because he's a MAGA guy. So it doesn't really matter to me. What matters is this guy's dead, which is good, and we have to stop things like this. You can't really trace it back to right-wing ideology. Maybe he was motivated by some form of religious extremism, which I think is not good. Okay? I don't like Mormonism either. I don't think that this is any acceptable way to engage in interfaith dialogue, because there's not dialogue. You're not saving people. You're killing people. It's the least Christian thing that anybody could do in that situation. So I don't know if he was motivated by that. I haven't seen any indication yet, unless there's some new development. But this guy is a demonic actor. I don't care who he voted for. He's going to hell. That's the way it is. And it's a tragedy. I don't want things like this to happen. Nobody should want things like this to happen. And I want to actually get to the bottom of stopping this, because it could happen to anybody. Crazy person does crazy thing. Whether they're motivated by left-wing ideology that preys on mentally weak people and mobilizes their foot soldiers, or if it's general schizophrenia that leads to something like what we saw in Michigan, it needs to stop. It needs to stop. I think left-wing violence is pretty easy to stop. I think the whole thing is easier to stop than people think, but people make it so complicated. They bog themselves down. The left wants to make it about firearms. The firearm didn't drive this guy into a church and light it on fire. Like, are these people? It's just gaslighting, and the whole thing with the Charlie Kirk thing. Oh well, it's the guns for that. Well, the gun that killed Charlie Kirk was like the last gun anyone would ever ban. It was a long gun, just relatively standard rifle sort of thing. If that gun would be banned, you wouldn't have a Second Amendment. I mean, that gun's legal with some obvious hurdles to get them in pretty much every other Western country as well. And even if you banned all guns, they're not going out of circulation. So there's no point in engaging in the gun debate. We always are playing defense. The left will say things like F your prayers, which is disgusting. People like Senator Ruben Gallego have said that. And he's in a swing state. They voted for Trump, by the way, which is even more disgusting. And we got to take him out as soon as we can. But it's deeper than just the, gun debate. The left is walking all over us, setting the narrative. Why don't we set the narrative? Why don't we just say prayers? We'll start with prayers. We'll end with action. The left will talk about taking action. They never do. But their action is just trying to virtue signal about how bad guns are. And we're always in a position of defense. I want to be in a position of offense. If people don't like hearing that, then they're part of the problem. We have to be going on offense. We cannot be bogged down by these lunatics that do things like what we've seen in Dallas and Utah and Minnesota and across the entire country. We can't allow it. We can't. And when it comes down to it, the right needs to start taking the lead. They need to take the lead. Now you could say, well, what do you expect us to do now? Well, here's the problem. Now, I think it's important to clarify at times that mass shootings are a relatively new phenomenon. I do, because it kind of showcases that it's a societal sickness problem and not a gun issue. You could say, well, why is it only in America? Well, it's not really only in America, but it's only really in America because of our set culture. Our set culture has kind of, in a way, accidentally lionized a lot of these people. And it's usually like you'll see one, and then you'll see another and another and another. They're copycat attacks. The way they handle it in the media and the way that they handle it with social media is very different. Canadians aren't going to do that because they have this sense of community in Canada that we don't have. They actually have a sense of nationalism and patriotism, but it's rooted in their hate and disdain for us. Me, you, Americans. Whether they want to admit it or not, it's a thing. They always see that stuff as beneath them, or it's an American problem. And then when you've seen that kind of spread around, it's like, okay, because there's a lot of guns in Canada. There are. I mean, there's about a quarter the amount of guns, but when you adjust for urbanicity, because Canada is a much more urban country where you look at the population density and how many people live in such an urban area, they have a decent amount of guns in Canada. But they don't really have this because of maybe it's that or whatever. So the main thing is you have to make sure that you can limit crazy people doing crazy things. What Canada doesn't have is big pharma. What Canada doesn't have are this like mass SSRI, just like free candy mill of pills going around that is altering people's minds. They don't have that. There's plenty of issues. Somebody asked me, Edward, not to put him on the spot, but he asked me, what solution would you posit? I said, take on big pharma. That's a big one. Armed guards in schools and churches. That's an important one. Armed guards are important because if they know that they're going to be entering a place where they're not going to get away with anything, they're not going to get away with anything. You talk about a job creator, that would be a great job creator to have, and it would stop problems. It would work to slow immigration. People are asking, what the hell does that have to do with anything? And it's true that immigration has eroded the social fabric of the United States. You can deny it. You can say it's offensive to say. I don't care because it's a problem. Diversity is not our strength. In some cases, it's a neutral thing. In some cases, it's a weakness. There's no denying that. If you understand the studies that have been conducted by several people over the course of years, Robert Putnam comes to mind. There's plenty of people that have conducted studies on this where immigration erodes the social fabric. And it makes sense. If you have new people moving in that don't share anything in common with you, you're not going to be able to connect with them. They can't speak your language. They don't share the same culture. Yeah, some of them can, but still, it's become a little bit of a problem. It's led more people into isolation, hence the term bowling alone, as we've heard used in just over time. There's been a book that's done on that. But social cohesion is an issue. When you have mass immigration of people that share little in common with you, even if they can assimilate over time, it's going to lead to less social engagement. It's scientifically backed up. I'm not blaming the people themselves, but there's a difference between the micro and the macro. And when you're looking at the macro, this is a big problem. And a lot of these people that carry out these attacks are men. Men are becoming weaker. Men are becoming more deranged. Men are becoming more psychotic, kind of more feminine, but they still have this ability to seek destruction when under attack. A lot of these mass shooters tend to be men, and you have a lot of these left-wing NGOs that push this anti-male bullshit in our society that drives people even deeper into isolation. And there's so many things we can do. When it comes down to just everything in general, you could say that it's not just these things, but these things do play a role. Obviously, when it comes down to men, for example, how many mass shooters are not like sexually deranged? Because a lot of them have, just like serial killers, have these weird sexual fetishes. They're addicted to pornography. That's why a disproportionate number of them, especially recently, happen to be transgender or have an affinity towards transgender individuals and get wrapped up in that ideology. They become addicted to pornography. Not everyone who is addicted to pornography engages in that, but a lot of people do. It leads certain people down certain rabbit holes, and it changes and alters their brain chemistry. It does. It's not, this is not a joke. I got a lot of heat for saying that it would actually, banning pornography would do a lot more to stop mass shooting than banning guns would. And these were more libertarians that came at me for some reason, pretending not to understand the science. It's not even a religious perspective that I'm looking at. It's more of the secular science behind it, where this is a mind-altering drug. There have been studies conducted that show that it alters your mind the way an opioid does, the way methamphetamines do. And what that can do is it can lead people into some weird, dark places. I mean, the guy that, have people even seen the depraved video of the search history of I think it was not Sandy Hook, but the Parkland perpetrator. I mean, he looked up school shooter pornography. I don't know what the hell, but if anything, he had like some weird sexual fetish for what he was carrying out. So it is a problem. And I'm not saying that everybody who watches that type of stuff is going to do stuff like that. In fact, it's mostly the opposite. But I haven't seen people that do things like what we've seen, these atrocities, that did not engage in that type of behavior, that were stable, that actively sought to be healthy people, healthy in mind, healthy in body, healthy in spirit. Haven't seen that. And it's a major problem. And I think the number one thing is social media, these pills, social isolation, because this is mainly a phenomenon that we've seen since 2007, and it's only gotten really, worse since COVID or a little bit before COVID. So we have to solve the problem. We have to tell people to take care of themselves, be healthy. Of course, there's going to be people that always find a way not to do that, which is why we need to make sure that there's things that we can control that we're not giving these people. Are there some people that might go on a black market and try to access SSRIs or something of that nature? I'm sure that you might find that, but at the end of the day, if you're not like starting people out on this type of stuff to begin with, it's going to be a lot harder for these people to get it. Over time, the rate of these occurrences are going to go down because something has to stop. This cannot keep happening day in and day out. So again, we're going to cover New Jersey because we'll talk about something that's a little bit more positive, and that is that it's tightening. The race is closing in. It's tightening up a little bit. And Jersey Jack is closing in on Mikey Sherrill in the Garden State. We have a poll from Emerson showing them at a tie. You had a poll from the most accurate pollster in 2021 that actually showed Jack leading, even though it's a Republican-aligned pollster. That poll from that same week in 2021, it nailed that race. Maybe it nails this one. maybe it doesn't. There's a lot of undecideds. I'm aware there were undecideds in that poll last time too, but everything we're seeing on the ground is showing and pointing towards a momentum building behind the Republicans in New Jersey, whether it's the early vote data from the mail returns, which again, you don't know if it's cannibalization because Republicans are more open to voting by mail now than they were in 2021, but it's still a positive thing to see nonetheless. And it would be enough, even if it's like 85% cannibalization, to put Republicans on track for victory. And you have endorsements coming from unions that backed Phil Murphy, that didn't back Jack, that are now backing Jack. And now you have the Democrat mayor, the second Democrat mayor of a city in New Jersey, in Mikey Sherrill's district nonetheless in Congress, to endorse Jersey Jack Ciattarelli for governor of New Jersey. So this is huge. And it makes sense. It makes sense. You look at his opponent. She's crooked. She's corrupt. Is she somebody who is that typical New Jersey politician? You have Jack Ciattarelli. We make jokes about, oh, he's the mob boss. He's going to run up the Italian vote. You know, those are jokes, obviously. Some people didn't like those. I was surprised, actually. Mostly Italians I've seen to be able to laugh at themselves, but you had a couple people that were not so happy about that. But you know, we're a little bit politically incorrect, and we're gonna keep it that way because that's how I do business here. If they don't like it, they don't have to listen. But you have this guy, he means business, and then you have this like woke type of Democrat on the other side, Trump obsessed, in a state that was relatively Trump friendly for historical purposes. Voted for Harris, but only by like 6 points, not even. And then you have this, candidate on the Democrat side involved in insider trading. Says she doesn't know if she made $7 million. You know if you made $7 million. This isn't $7 or $70. This is $7 million. You know damn well if you made that much money off of stock trading. Don't even try to lie about it. And then she lied about her scandal in the military, where she cheated on some, I guess, educational thing, and she wasn't even able to walk down the aisle for graduation. So she lied, and now she's caught lying. That's not good character, and statewide level races are less polarized to the point where a scandal like that could sink you. It could. I'm not saying she's like Mark Robinson level with his Nude Africa type of scandals, but the dam is breaking, and you can see it here. The dam is breaking. That's the dam. New Jersey, here you come, and the red wave. Now, will it be enough? I don't know. I don't know if it's going to be enough, and I'm not going to pretend to sell people a dream that's not going to happen, but you do love to see it. You do love to see the fact that it is very possible that this is going to happen. This is a hotly contested race to watch, and it can't be ignored. You cannot look at this race and just say, oh, we're going to ignore it. No, this is a race that's hotly contested. We're going to watch it. We look forward to election night. Get out and vote New Jersey. Get out and vote Virginia. Even though Virginia, I think, is closer to a Democrat hold, I think that everywhere. Pennsylvania is a huge one. Now you have a big scandal for the Pennsylvania Democrat Supreme Court judge covering up crimes in the whole case revolving around Bill Cosby back in the day. Now they're involved. They're implicated. So Republicans, again, need to set the narrative. They need to do a good job of it. Don't let the Democrats set the narrative. They need to start setting it. And the more they do that, the better we're going to be as a nation, the more effective they're going to be as a party, the more trust that a lot of these low-propensity voters are going to have that are disillusioned with the political system in the Republican Party, in this movement. It's much better with Donald Trump leading it than some other person leading it that doesn't know what the hell they're doing. So we'll take it from here. We'll get to Super Chats. But New Jersey, it is close. It is not that far apart right now in the Garden State. So we have a decent amount of Super Chats. We're not at our goal yet, but we're getting closer and closer. But we already did the first Super Chat when we were waiting to hit the like threshold, which, by the way, we're at 200. Let's get to 300. We have almost 350 people in chat, even though it's getting a little bit late on a Sunday. But Object Class Keeter for 5 says easy narrative, guns aren't the problem. Almost all shootings are guns that were acquired illegally. Well, it's not just it's some of the mass shootings and the shootings, but you're right. I mean, these people will find a way to obtain a gun. You have too many guns in circulation. Whether you're happy about that or not, it's not the point. They're not going away. You're not going to destroy every single gun in the entire country. It's not going to happen. You have no shot to do that. Polite Rude Guy for 2 says Trump 2028. Stephen Miller is not. Well, yeah, they're calling Stephen Miller a Nazi because he gave a speech and used the word storm. And that's a common euphemism that people will use in politics to mean something big or revenge. And anybody who understands politics and power better than the Democrats is labeled a fascist. You know, Mitt Romney doesn't get called he did, to be fair, by some people, but it wasn't as widespread. Like John McCain, yeah, you could find an example of somebody calling him Hitler or something. I get that. But it wasn't as widespread because nobody was threatened by John McCain. Nobody looked at John McCain and said, this person is a threat to us. In fact, the Democrats, they got it was like the Washington Generals. We'll let you play. We're not going to let you win. And maybe they will let some people win if they don't see them as a threat to the system. But somebody like a Stephen Miller, he just terrifies them because he understands that he's not afraid to stand up to these people. He's not afraid to weaponize the basic power that is handed to us, that the left weaponizes tenfold against us. So Stephen Miller, a bald Jewish guy in his 40s, is the new Hitler to these people. That's how good he is at understanding power and politics, to the point where they're so terrified of this guy, not as like a political candidate, but as just somebody in the administration who's effective and is actually doing his job. They want the old guard. They want the John Kellys running the show again in the Trump administration. But Stephen Miller, they're terrified of him because they understand he gets it. And that's why they don't like him. That's why, despite him being some bald Jewish guy in his 40s, they decide to call him, he's a Nazi. Doesn't make any sense, does it? No, it doesn't. But they are threatened by him because he's effective, and that's why we love Stephen Miller, and he must be protected at all costs. So American Nerd 1776 for 5 says, even though Trump has got some of the things going after what happened to Kirk, it doesn't seem like enough. What should he do next? Well, I think that there's only so much you can do. Seems like it takes a while to levy these charges. Takes a while to go after these NGOs. Doesn't mean he's not doing it. Now, we want, what exactly do people want him to do? You know, you have a lot of people saying Donald Trump isn't doing enough. I understand that it's not like there's just a magic button that he can press and everything is fine. These people went after him. They killed somebody who was basically a fourth son to him. You think that he's going to back off? No, they know that he's going after them. That's why they're throwing a temper tantrum, saying he needs to turn down the temperature. How about you turn down the temperature? Your rhetoric led to the death of one of our heroes, and you decide to point fingers and blame us for the political climate. They can go, our word, a cactus. Enough is enough. American Nerd 1776 is the government going to shut down or no? It seems like Schumer wants a deal because honestly, his name, as ridiculous as it sounds, is the reason why Democrats are going to be screwed, because Schumer's shutdown just flows. It just does. You can't deny that. Even people on the left are admitting that, because you really have to own it, because it doesn't matter if you control the Senate or not. When the filibuster's in place, which I don't think it needs to be anymore. I don't think we're handing back power in the Senate. But if the filibuster is there, you need 60 votes to keep the government open. So what's going to happen here? Is Chuck Schumer going to cave and fold, or he's got to take the blame? He's got to take the blame, because there are polls that show more people would blame Schumer for it than would blame either the Republicans or Trump. Now, to be fair, it's a plurality, but it's still quite a bit. And I think it is an issue that he's going to have to deal with. Nicholas loves traveling for 10. Says, keep me in your prayers. I recently quit my job at Hershey's. I see it as a blessing in disguise. I don't know where I'll be working at now, but I know that Jesus will lead me to something greater. Well, I appreciate the super chat, especially because you are now recently not in employment. But let's hope that and pray that you are able to achieve the success that you deserve to achieve in life. Polite Rude Guy says, I will never apologize for voting to deport illegals. Tucson Paleocon for 5 says, there are decades where nothing happens, and there are months where decades happen. September seems to be one of those months. Well, I don't know if there's decades where nothing happens. I think a lot happened in the 2010s. I think there's every decade, maybe the 70s was kind of bland. I don't really want to say it was completely bland, but the 70s, because the 60s were pretty chaotic. The 70s were pretty bland. The 80s were sort of a national revival to a certain extent. Not fully, but American pride was much higher under Reagan than it is now. In the 90s, I don't know. But I agree. Sometimes certain things in time happen quickly. It seems like in the era of social media that it's never a dull moment. I mean, 2023 was kind of a boring-ish year, but 2024 was not, 2025 was not. So Tucson Paleocon says, opinion on this Brylan Hollyhand fella. I don't even know. I know who he is. I don't know, like, his name is kind of complicated, but you have this, I don't really even want to address it too much, but I will because you asked. Because I don't think it's worth giving airtime to people that are just like industry plants that aren't going to go anywhere if you don't give them airtime. But you have this guy who's like 20 years old and is now doing a campus tour and trying to position himself as the successor to Charlie Kirk because he met him a few times or whatever. And it's just kind of generic and bland. I don't knock the hustle. But I will say that he's not Charlie Kirk. He's not going to replace Charlie Kirk. Nobody can replace Charlie Kirk. Maybe he would agree with that. But I just think it's not worth giving too much airtime to people that are just so bland and come off as industry plants. It's clear that his family has a lot of money and they're paying for the whole thing. I've never seen the guy. I don't know if he's good or not, but it seems like he's bland from every clip I have seen. So let's see. LinRx52 for 10 says, recent events are horrifying, but have touched many who are not connected to those involved, causing an awakening. We win if we seize the moment, be bold and bring it home, make Charlie proud. Yeah, a lot of people have become more, turned more to their faith since this, and I think that's a good thing in a way, because usually you think of tragedy and loss and people, you would think some people would turn away. But the whole thing surrounding it has turned more people to their faith than away from their faith, and made people, in some cases, more optimistic than pessimistic. It still is like like a whole aura of pessimism surrounding the whole thing, but it has turned a lot more people towards their faith, which I think is a good thing. So I'll leave it at that. Polite Rude Guy says, Clarence Thomas says to overturn gay marriage. Well, that's not surprising. It's like, that's already been set in stone. Every time it's been up for a vote, he's voted against it, or he's voted for overturning. American Nerd 1776 for 5 says, what the hell is Pam Bondi doing at the DOJ? Is she actually following Trump's order on Antifa, or is she too busy talking? Well, I think that she's a mixed bag. I think the Epstein stuff was bungled. The optics of it were not so good, and I think that does rest on her shoulders. Now, as for the rest of it, as for what's happening with the targeting of the gangs and illegals, I think I will say this: she's been a very good attorney general for a conventional time, as in she does her job and puts her head down and does the work. The problem with that is we need somebody that has a little bit more teeth, and maybe she can be that person, because at the basic stuff, she does well. But in terms of actually like making sure that you can do to the opposition what they've been doing to us for the longest time and be effective, she's going to have to change some course. Now, it does seem like they're going after Comey. They're going after some people. That's a good thing. I mean, let's not pretend like there's nothing being done here. But, I mean, Donald Trump firing a warning shot on Truth Social, saying he wants to see more done. Well, now we got the indictment of Comey. So, again, And he actually deserved it. Donald Trump didn't deserve it. Comey covered up for Hillary Clinton committing a major crime. Major crime. Now, I don't know if this specifically ties into that. I haven't done all the research about the indictment just yet. I'm sure we're going to be talking about it a lot more as the facts develop. But just for that alone, he doesn't deserve to walk away from that unpunished and basically speeding up and telling everybody that they need to, like before the election, that whole ordeal. There's no way they went through all those emails in 3 days. AI wasn't a thing back then as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah, look into that stuff because they've done it to us. But we're not we have to if we do it to them just 10% of the amount they've done it to us, it's like you pinch them a little bit, they're going to start crying. That's how these people operate. American Nerd 1776 for 5 says, rewatch The Dark Knight over the weekend. Everything that happened in the past few weeks feels similar to the chaos the Joker created in that movie. Interesting. The Video Maker 2341 for 10 says the Dem in Dover, New Jersey. Well, we covered that endorsement of Jack, and yeah, it's in Cheryl's district. And when Dem politicians in her district are endorsing it, yeah, exactly. It's a victory. Take it. Rubik's Cube says, I hope we win New Jersey by 6 I understand the joke. I understand that I don't understand the joke, actually. I know it is a joke. But, yeah, we're not going to win it by that much. But we could win a close race in New Jersey. Absolutely. It could be like 50-48. But I'll take a 1-vote win, won't we? In a state like that, you take a 1-vote win. Hope that Jack would win re-election, though. Austin Lewis says, think we will win Virginia's governorship. I don't, actually. The Video Maker says, Dover is a Hillary plus 45, Biden plus 35, Kamala plus 13 city. City trending rightward massively like many other cities. Yeah, it's definitely a Hispanic area, it seems, because of that 10-point shift from 16 to 20, and then it gets exacerbated in 2024. So XJ Cherokee Bear says, when Jack wins, JoJo from Jurors will scream and cry and act like a 2-year-old. Well, probably. The Video Maker says, New Jersey's rightward shift could be so bad for Dems it might break their gerrymander in their congressional and state legislature. Exactly. And also, the whole Zoran, Mamandi, whatever you want to call him, just surge in New York City. I know Eric Adams dropped out. It's not going to matter. If Curtis dropped out, it still wouldn't matter. It's going to be Cuomo's not winning, and he doesn't deserve to win either, to be fair. But New York City is going to turn into a disaster, and a lot of people are going to go to Pennsylvania. A lot of people are going to go to New Jersey, and what that's going to do is it's going to make those states make those states redder, and they're already swing states. Pennsylvania gets 2% redder. Democrats probably aren't winning a presidential election ever again, barring something insane. If New Jersey gets a couple points redder, it's a swing state Democrats also have to defend, which I think they will, given the rightward shift. And I think Jack winning would be huge for that. Let's see. C.H. Danhauser for 5 says, your channel is a shining light in this political sphere, always informed and always on point. Keep up the excellent work. Also, we are Charlie Kirk. We are all Charlie Kirk. Anybody who speaks their mind now has a target on their back because of it, especially here on the right, and that's a major problem. So we need to make sure that this stuff does not happen. So I appreciate the super chat, appreciate the sentiment. Official M16 says, will I make another ranking of every president? It's possible. I've been very busy lately to the point where I haven't been able to do like a long scripted out sort of videos, but I could do it in the future, yeah. American Nerd 1776 says, didn't the 70s have Vietnam ending? Yeah, but that was kind of like, I think that was kind of foreseen in the late 60s. Kent State, Nixon, Watergate, yeah. As for like an economic downturn, I don't know how eventful it was. I don't think the 70s were nearly as eventful as the 60s or the 2000s or the 2010s or even the 90s. C.H. Danhauser for 5 says, for the super chat goal, Rep is the best. Well, I appreciate that. We're 3 away, by the way. We hit it. We could do a prediction, a quick prediction at the end of the show. We're about an hour in. American Nerd 76 says we won't win Virginia governor, maybe the Virginia AG, maybe. Depends on the down ballot effects because they were pretty airtight in 2021. I think they're going to be a little bit looser. I think that Miyares being an incumbent helps. I just don't know by how much it's going to help. So 12 says, who do you think will get 6? I don't even know that many candidates. I get the reference. I just don't have an answer. American Nerd 76 says, when Zoran wins, I guarantee NYC will become the real-life Gotham. Well, Zoran, he's a moron, first of all. I mean, the guy wants government-run grocery stores. Where have I seen that? This is past even Bernie Sanders level stuff. This is like straight out of North Korea. And he thinks it's going to help them out. He thinks it's going to help out to have government-run grocery stores. I don't think that's going to help out people. I don't think that's going to be beneficial. And his crime policies are far worse than whatever they had going on now in New York. It's going to be another London. It already is another London in some parts. I mean, the Islamic population is now 10% almost of the city. You don't hear about it a lot, but it's true. I mean, it's just New York we're talking about, and the Islamic percentage of the population is surpassing the Jewish percentage in New York nonetheless. I mean, it is rapidly changing as a city, especially parts of Queens, and a lot of it's from the subcontinent. Pakistan comes to mind. So it's definitely a changing place very rapidly too. So he could be that Sadiq Khan type of figure, absolutely, but probably even more far left than Sadiq Khan, at least when it comes down to like the economic front. But yeah, Europe just does not have common sense. Say what you want about the United States, at least we're not Europe. At least we're not Europe. Shout out to Noah helping us get one closer to that goal. We're at 19 now. C.H. Danhauser for 5 says, here's to the Yankees sweeping Boston. Well, I don't really have a dog in that fight. We'll see what happens in the wild card series, but I have no idea. We're one super chat away from the goal. Will we hit it? Did the Packers Cowboys game end? It ended in a tie. What? I've never seen a 40-40 tie before. Now that's interesting. Why would you? Well, I've never seen that before, where a team kicks to tie at the end of overtime. Never seen that before. It kind of makes sense, but they're not going for the win. But we only have 4 minutes left to hit the goal, and we got it. We got it. American Nerd 1776 says thoughts on the midterms next year. I don't know. It's a very loaded question. I've done a lot of videos on the midterms. I think that the biggest race to look out for, it depends on what level. I think the House is going to be close. I think the Senate is going to stay Republican. I think the governorships are going to... some might go back and not a whole lot of back and forth. I think Republicans could see net zero. But we'll see. But we hit the goal. So, I don't know. We have to do and it's got to be a serious prediction. But we want to do, assuming Vance versus what Democrat are we going to do? Really quickly, a speed prediction. We do Newsom too much. So let's change it up. I don't want to do Newsom. AOC. You're the number one. I think and the number 2 wants AOC. Mitchell Ryan asked if I didn't see the Bears game. I saw the second half of Lions-Browns, and that's it. So, as for the AOC, everyone wants AOC. So I think that we could do Vance versus AOC. I know the chat might want to be giving some insights, but we will in terms of some of these things. But AOC seems to be the one people are talking about. Now, let me give a little bit of background to this, because AOC is somebody that you would never think in your right mind would ever get the Democrat nomination, but because the inmates have ran the prison and are running the prison in the incompetent cesspool known as the Democrat leadership, she actually has got a shot to get that nomination, especially because superdelegates are now voting after the fact. Now, corporate donors are not going to be happy about that. She doesn't relate well to boomers. She relates well to young liberals and leftists. She probably would do a good job at limiting the Green Party share. But a lot of people saying Bashir, but we're not doing Bashir. Bashir could be the VP, but he's not going to have any impact. He's not going to have any impact. But it's pretty obvious that you're not going to see AOC compete in any of these states that voted for Donald Trump by 10 points in 2024. I don't care what the economy looks like. Her policies are extraordinarily unpopular. She's a horrible fit for white working class men or women, besides the type of people that actually liked Tim Walz in 2024. That's like the constituency maybe she could try to make inroads with, but she's too radical. She has too much baggage. She's going to try to reinvent herself. It's not going to work. She'll lose Miami-Dade County by 25 points, if not more than that. It'll look the inverse of 2016 with AOC, because they have so many people escaping the far-left policies of Cuba that she embraces and wants to emulate. These things are not going to poll well. They might poll well individually, but when they're actually tested, it's not going to bode too well. Not going to do well in Alaska. Horrific for the oil industry. State of Texas, dead on arrival. So out of the gate, 219 for the Republicans, that's not good enough. Now, we could even just take it further and just try to go state by state, like in the Republican side. Like, do we start off with the swing states that are going red? But let's just do the safe Democrat states. Oregon, Washington, she's not going to do well there. Yeah, or she will do well there. That's her constituency. Hawaii, she'll win. It'll get closer. Colorado, that's a type of state. There's more liberal Hispanics there. A lot of far left, like millennials. They run the Denver show. She'll do fine in Colorado. Just fine there. DC, obviously. But when it comes down to her behavior, you understand that she's kind of been quiet lately. But if she's out there on the campaign trail, and yeah, obviously she'll do well in Vermont and Maryland and Massachusetts, but she's making a lot of noise. But I don't, the one constituency that you could say that she might improve over Harris is Hispanics. I don't know if I see that. Maybe she wouldn't be the worst option, but I do think that it would be very polarizing. It's a joke. Everyone says, well, in these Central American countries, the elections are 50% fascist, 50% communist. And I think that with AOC, maybe she would do roughly, around 50%, but she's not going to do well enough. It might be enough to save New Mexico for her. She'd win California by 10 to 15. It would not be by much. Illinois would get closer. I feel like Illinois, I don't think she would do too well with black voters. They don't tend to like those progressive or socialist types. Bernie Sanders, he did a lot of relentless pandering. It did not work out well for him. So especially young black men, I think AOC would do even worse. Imagine if Buttigieg was on the ticket, then she would do atrocious. That's another prediction we have to do soon. But Illinois, I could see it being close. And I think, New Jersey, I think would actually flip in this instance, especially because of how much of a disaster New York City is and how that just directly implicates her. I don't think New York would go blue, but I think it would go red, but I think it would go Democrat by 5. I could see it looking like this, and Connecticut would be slightly competitive because Vance can now dip back into that pool of college-educated white voters because he can relate to both the white working class and the, his approach is a little bit different, and that can go a long way. It can kind of be like a double-edged sword. And he also is from that Rust Belt. I think he would win Pennsylvania fairly easily. I think he'd win Michigan. I think he'd win Wisconsin. Wisconsin be a little interesting because it is true. Madison, I feel like, would still come out very, very strong for AOC, and those far left candidates tend to do a little bit better. And I actually think she'd win Minnesota because Minnesota's beyond saving, but I think Nebraska's second would flip red. Maine at large probably stays blue. New Hampshire, I think, flips red. Vance, even though he's not really libertarian, he could find a way to communicate well enough to them to peel off some of their support. Delaware, blue. I don't know what's going on in Delaware, but not a lot is good that's going on there. A lot of Marylanders retiring there. And then Rhode Island, probably under 10, but still. Virginia, I think, would go blue, but not by much. And then I think North Carolina, you'd be pushing likely. Georgia, she's awful for Georgia. I think Vance would win it, even though it's moving left. She's a horrible fit for AZ. Not too good for Nevada either. Maybe she'd do a little bit better there than Arizona. But it looks something like this, honestly. It does seem like the electoral map, the ceiling and the floor for both are high. But assuming an okay economy, a decent Trump approval rating, AOC would not do too well. And if the dam breaks, let's say New Mexico goes, just imagine if New York went. But Zoran just messes it up too much. Boom. That'd be like 364, 174. So it's like something like that would probably be on the table if Democrats put up a crazy person like AOC. Now, Gavin Newsom, that's going to be a tighter race. Newsom has the sociopathic ability. I think he would get exposed enough to lose, but I think it would be a competitive race. I don't think he's a strong candidate on the surface level at all. But someone in chat says, isn't this what you said about Kamala? No, I didn't say that at all about Kamala. I said Kamala would possibly put a state like, New Jersey or New Hampshire or New Mexico into play. I was pretty much right. I mean, we actually underestimated Trump. Michigan was not a state I expected to see going for Trump by 1.4%, but I'm glad that it did. Very glad that it did. So, let's see. We have more super chats. Video Maker says people who think AOC could beat Vance, she's been doing worse in her own district, despite it being gerrymandered bluer. Well, part of that is the Hispanic shift against Democrats, but if anything, it shows that extends to her down ballot. American Nerd 76 says, picked AOC. I think she's one of the worst candidates. What if Crockett is AOC's running mate? Well, then we're talking about a red Virginia, possibly Minnesota, Maine. You would get to that 400 threshold if Crockett is anywhere near that ticket. Video Maker says Vance could use his Catholic Rust Belt background in ethnic white working class suburbs. Pick Rubio as, I think he will pick Rubio, and I think Rubio would be a good VP pick for Vance. Probably even a better VP pick than he would have hypothetically been for Trump. Because it's hard to hate the guy. Tucson Paleocon says, imagine if Fetterman endorsed Vance and Fuentes endorsed AOC. Oh, he probably will. I mean, he's the same person that said AOC is more America first than 99% of Republicans. Like, the guy's a crazy person. That's obviously not true. Everybody knows it's not true. You have a subsect of internet people that, happen to follow the words of a madman, and now they give him a full-on space at the New York Times writing a puff piece like he's Richard Spencer, the sequel. It's kind of funny. DEI is so out of control that even in the reboot, Richard Spencer's brown. It's just insane what's going on. But no, it's cursed, but it's probably going to be reality. Because Vance derangement syndrome is just stupid. It all comes down to this person didn't notice me, therefore I'm going to throw a temper tantrum. That's all it comes down to for some of these spiteful people. They don't know anything about what, they talk about Palantir or fear-mongering about whatever that does. They don't know what it does. They couldn't describe it to you effectively if they tried, most of these people. I'm not talking about the commentators per se. I'm talking about a lot of the people that just follow the commentators. They know how to spin it well. They may be rhetorically talented. But the talent really stops there. People are just looking to kind of carve out their little grift. Even if they're good at it, doesn't mean that they're in the moral or factual correctness about Vance. This is a guy that if he's actually like a secret neocon or traitor, he's not going to be the one expressing the most restraint in a private group chat about a Yemen strike. You know, if that came out and it was the opposite and he was the one that wanted it, then I would say, okay, well, maybe there is something about this guy that is a little bit amiss. But everything that we understand was that was not a string of messages that was supposed to be leaked. And it was the neocon, who's now out of Trump's cabinet, that leaked it supposedly accidentally to the same reporter that is the architect of the suckers and losers hoax and so many other hoaxes over the years against Donald Trump. I don't even know how he had this person's signal contact. But I think that kind of proved that Vance was more legitimate of a good faith type of person that had a more of an epiphany than somebody who's strategically shifting. Because if you wanted to strategically shift and be groomed to be president, you don't actively counter-signal Trump in the 2016 general election. Maybe in the primary election, but not the general election, knowing that that's something that will come back to bite you in the rear end. If he's trying to be elected president, it's also like, does converting to Catholicism really help you? Like maybe it does now because of where the votes are, but I think it's genuine because there are a lot more Protestants in this nation who won't vote for a Catholic than vice versa. I'm not saying it's going to be the be-all and end-all of either way, but now I think it would help him. But without hindsight, would you really be able to pinpoint it down that it would? Especially him running in Ohio? It's not like he was running in Massachusetts or like New Jersey even. So, it beats me. But he doesn't really have the career path of somebody that you could say is just somewhat just like lurking in the shadows, ready to strike. I thought initially that I was very skeptical, not of Vance more so in 24. At first, I was questioning why Trump would pick somebody like a Vance because it's a double down pick, but he had enough political capital to make it work. And I think Vance ended up complimenting Trump, not like you look nice compliment, but like compliment the other way with an E, better than I think anybody else really could in retrospect. So I'll admit I was wrong about that. But when it comes down to Vance initially running for Senate, I was skeptical because of his past, but he really proved himself. I feel like he proved himself in the Senate. He had so much incentive to betray Donald Trump in 2022 when everything was going south for him. He was the first senator to endorse Donald Trump for 2024 in that primary, when he had all the incentive in the world to endorse somebody like a Ron DeSantis or I don't know about Nikki Haley, but like he had a lot of incentive to betray Donald Trump, and he stood right by his side. That shows character. It really does. Because it showed that he's not about handing the GOP back to the same people that used to give him praise that now view him as a traitor. Oh, but he worked for a company that was like this is the thing. You'll hear people say Vance is bad because he worked for Palantir. Then they'll say Palantir is bad because of Peter Thiel. Peter Thiel was actually an original Trump supporter in 2016 when J.D. Vance wasn't. Think about that. So was Thiel good then and Vance was bad and then Thiel's bad? How does that even make sense? It's like a paradox that needs to be corrected that can't be corrected. So either way, I think he'd be a great president. As for his ability to communicate and connect with voters, I think it's better than a lot of people give him credit for. We'll just have to wait and see when the time comes, guys. But we're probably going to wrap up the stream. It's late. And I will see you guys in the next one. Like the stream before you go. Subscribe. Hit that bell. I'll see you guys next time. Red Eagle out.